There's a creature on Earth that never has to die of old age. It won't die from disease, it won't die from time, not unless something eats it first. By the end of this video, I'm going to show you exactly how it cheats death. But first, we've got 14 other animals whose bodies do things that sound completely made up. A shrimp that punches hot enough to rival the surface of the sun, an octopus with 3 hearts and blood the color of the sky, a mole that decides what's food faster than you can blink. Every single one of these is real, independently verified, no exceptions, and we're starting with raw power. Picture sticking your hand into a wall socket, and then imagine that socket is 3 times stronger. That's roughly what one hit from Electrophorus volti feels like. This eel was only recognized as its own species in 2019, after scientists spent over 250 years assuming there was just one kind of electric eel on Earth. It can discharge up to 860 volts through its own body, the highest voltage of any known living animal, generated by cells stacked like thousands of tiny batteries wired in series. It uses that shock to stun prey and to defend itself. 860 volts from something that lives quietly in a river. Now here's one that sounds completely made up. There's a shrimp about the size of your thumb that can snap its claw shut so fast it creates a bubble hotter than the surface of the sun. Here's how. The claw slams shut at around 100 kilometers an hour, firing a jet of water so violent it drops the pressure around it below water's boiling point. That forms a cavitation bubble, and when that bubble collapses, less than 300 microseconds later, it briefly reaches around 5,000 Kelvin. The sun's surface is about 5,772 Kelvin. A shrimp you could hold in your palm is punching hot enough to almost rival a star. The collapse also produces a flash of light and a bang loud enough to stun or kill the prey it's hunting, all from an animal smaller than your hand. Speaking of punches, the mantis shrimp might have the fastest one in the animal kingdom. Its clubbed arm accelerates faster than a bullet leaving a gun, hitting speeds up to 23 meters a second underwater, with a force over 2,500 times its own body weight. And that same shrimp sees the world in a way no human ever will. Up to 16 types of color receptors in each eye, compared to your 3, with eyes that rotate independently like tiny gimbaled cameras. It's not just the strongest puncher in the ocean. It might be seeing colors you don't even have names for. But raw power isn't the ocean's only trick. Some of its weirdest secrets aren't about speed or heat at all. They're about how alien a body can actually be. How big do you think the biggest eyeball in the entire animal kingdom is? Bigger than your fist, bigger than a dinner plate. The colossal squid's eyes measure roughly 27 centimeters across, about the size of a soccer ball. They're the largest eyes ever measured on any living thing, and they didn't get that big by accident. Down in the pitch black of the deep ocean, those massive eyes are built to catch the faintest flicker of bioluminescent light, like a warning flash from an approaching sperm whale, one of the only predators that hunts them. A soccer ball staring back at you from the dark. Here's a creature with one of the strangest defenses on the planet. Try to bite a hagfish, and within seconds, it releases a substance that expands into slime up to 10,000 times its original volume, enough to turn a bucket of water into something you could barely swim through. That slime clogs the attacker's gills, and sharks have been documented backing off, unable to breathe, forced to let go. And if the bite lands before the slime even kicks in, the hagfish's skin is so loose and unattached to its body that it can barely be injured in the first place. A creature that turns being eaten into the predator's problem. An octopus doesn't have 1 heart, it has 3. 2 pump blood to the gills, and a 3rd pumps it everywhere else, and that 3rd heart actually stops beating whenever the octopus swims, which is part of why they'd rather crawl. And that blood isn't red, it's blue, thanks to a copper-based protein called hemocyanin, instead of the iron-based one running through you, better suited to cold, low-oxygen water. Oh, and about 2/3 of an octopus's neurons live in its arms, not its head, so each arm can taste, sense, and problem-solve almost on its own. 3 hearts, blue blood, and a brain that's spread out through 8 separate limbs. An octopus is barely playing by the same rules as the rest of us. And then there's the octopus that doesn't just hide from danger. It becomes something else entirely. The mimic octopus, discovered off the coast of Indonesia in 1998, can reshape its body and change color to imitate more than 15 different animals. A venomous sea snake, a lionfish, a flattened stingray gliding across the seafloor. And here's the part that gets researchers. It appears to choose which dangerous animal to impersonate based on exactly which predator is threatening it in that moment. It's not just camouflage. It's an octopus doing improv theater to stay alive. Quick gut check. How many of these have you heard of before today? Because we are only halfway through, and the next stretch is where things get genuinely ridiculous. You don't need to live in the deep ocean to have a body that breaks the rules. Some of the wildest tricks on this list are happening on land, and even underground. Cut off a starfish's arm and it grows back. Cut into an axolotl, and it can regrow almost anything. Limbs, its tail, its spinal cord, even parts of its own heart and brain, with no scarring at all. A chemical signal called retinoic acid tells the regrowing cells exactly what body part they're rebuilding, and exactly how much of it to make. It's precise enough that labs all over the world keep entire colonies of axolotls just to study how regeneration like this actually works, in the hope of one day applying it to us. This next one keeps two separate chemicals stored inside its own body, completely harmless on their own. But threaten a bombardier beetle, and it mixes those two chemicals together in an internal chamber lined with enzymes, triggering a reaction that reaches the boiling point of water. 100 degrees Celsius, inside its own abdomen. Then it fires that boiling spray out in rapid pulses, like a machine gun, aimed with startling accuracy at whatever's attacking it. Those pulses aren't for show either. They let the internal chamber cool down between shots, so the beetle doesn't cook itself alive in the process. Naked mole rats can live around 30 years, about 10 times longer than a mouse. And across decades of research, scientists have found almost no tumors in the species at all. They also don't feel the burning pain of acid, or capsaicin, the compound that makes chili peppers hot. And the star-nosed mole has a nose ringed with 22 fleshy tentacles, packed with over 25,000 touch sensors. And its brain can decide whether something is food in as little as 8 milliseconds, then catch and eat it in about 120 milliseconds. That's the fastest confirmed eating speed of any mammal on Earth, faster than you can finish a blink. Every animal so far has had one seriously impressive trick. But I told you at the start, there were two creatures on this list that basically broke the rulebook on survival completely. Let's start with the one that survived something no animal should be able to survive. In 2007, the European Space Agency strapped a payload of tiny dried-out creatures called tardigrades to the outside of a satellite and launched them directly into the open vacuum of space. For 10 days, these microscopic animals were exposed to the vacuum itself, to cosmic radiation, and, for some of them, direct, unfiltered solar ultraviolet light. Most survived the vacuum and radiation combined. When scientists rehydrated them back on Earth, many revived completely and went on to have healthy offspring. It was the first time any animal had ever been shown to survive that exact combination: the vacuum of space, cosmic radiation, and solar ultraviolet light all at once. A creature you can barely see, surviving something we build entire spacecraft to protect astronauts from. And that brings us to the one I promised you at the very beginning. Meet Turritopsis dohrnii, the immortal jellyfish. When this animal gets old, sick, injured, or starved, it doesn't just die like every other creature on this list eventually does. It does something no other known animal can do. It reverts. Its mature cells actually convert back into an earlier form, a process called transdifferentiation. Imagine a butterfly turning back into a caterpillar, and the jellyfish sinks back down into a juvenile stage called a polyp. From there, it can regrow into a brand new jellyfish, genetically identical to the one it used to be. Scientists first described this species back in 1883, but nobody understood what it was actually doing until the 1990s. It can still be eaten, and it can still be killed, but left alone, it never has to die of old age. That's not science fiction. That's a real animal, alive right now, somewhere in the ocean. 15 animals, 0 of them made up. If your brain is still catching up with that shrimp in the sun, or that jellyfish that just refuses to die, that's exactly the reaction I was going for. Subscribe for more of the real world's weirdest facts, and tell me in the comments which one you're sending to a friend who won't believe you.